Welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I am Amarachi Obani. Fighting the Ebola virus might just be tougher than expected, as the head of the UN mission charged with fighting Ebola in West Africa has revealed that he does not yet have the resources necessary to defeat the virus. Now, despite the contributions coming in from the UK, from China, Cuba, and the US, Tony Banbury says more help is still urgently needed. He's however hopeful that the 70% target of achieving bed space for new cases and 70% safe burials for December will be possible. Now, according to the World Health Organization, the confirmed death toll is now at 4,818. However, 27 of the deaths have been in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and in Guinea, threatening those are the three worst affected nations by the Ebola virus outbreak. International efforts have been coming from the UK, which opened new centers in Sierra Leone just yesterday, and a shipment of food and supplies came in from the UK, also landing in Liberia in Sierra Leone about 2 days ago. The WHO says it's seen a decline of those figures of number of cases of deaths in Liberia, reducing over time, and is quite hopeful, though, despite the UN's projections, that the virus may be contained as early as next year. Meanwhile, the Libya parliamentary elections have been invalidated by a Supreme Court after a group of politicians challenged the elections in court. The Supreme Court declared the parliamentary elections unconstitutional. That ruling was celebrated by militias occupying the capital, Tripoli, which has set up an alternative parliament. A Libyan politician stated that the ruling would not be recognized by the politician as it is baseless, and it's also a step towards dividing the country. Judge Kamal Bashir Dahan, head of Libya's Supreme Court, met with members of the Constitutional Chamber in Tripoli on earlier today, and it's not yet clear how the Supreme Court came to the decision. Members of the Economic Community of West African States have been in the Burkina Faso capital, Ouagadougou, discussing with the military leaders on an agreement concerning transitional government, a handover to transitional government in the country as soon as possible. At the end of their meeting on Wednesday night, it was agreed that, yes, there will be a civilian government, but that will not be possible until next year. And elections have been scheduled for November as well. The military has been in charge since President Blaise Compaoré was forced to quit last week following mass protests against his 27-year rule and extension of it in the country. The presidents of Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal were in the country yesterday. They've all moved now to Ghana to discuss the situation in Burkina Faso, as well as the Ebola virus disease ravaging through West Africa.
The team was led by President John Mahama, alongside the presidents of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, and Senegal, Macky Sall. All three represented the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The task was simple: to convince Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida to appoint a civilian transitional leader to guide the country to elections next year. Mr. Mahama echoed the ECOWAS position on the country's political situation.
And include all the segments of Burkina society in order to take the decisions that we have to take to establish a stable democracy. And so, yes, we are upset with our brothers about what happened and our sisters, but it is important for us to also involve them so that whatever we agree will be one that is agreed to by the whole of society. We cannot take unilateral decisions and say that any transitional government that we establish is a transitional government of a group of Burkina society, excluding others. And so yes, it's a painful incident, but it's my hope that God will give you the pass.
The meeting was attended by civil society groups and tribal chiefs who issued a statement after the talks. It said that all parties in the negotiations wanted an eminent civilian personality to head the transition. Political leaders at the meeting agreed that the country's political transition should last a year, followed by elections in November 2015. Under Burkina Faso's constitution, the head of the National Assembly should take office if the president resigns. Meanwhile, the country's now former president, Blaise Compaoré, is cooling his heels in Côte d'Ivoire, where he has been welcomed by President Alassane Ouattara. He had fled to the country with the help of France and is said to be staying currently in Yamoussoukro. Pursuant to their meeting in Ouagadougou, the ECOWAS delegation of 3 presidents traveled to Ghana for a special ECOWAS summit on Thursday to discuss the situation in Burkina Faso and the Ebola virus disease. Their efforts following an ultimatum issued by the African Union, giving the military 2 weeks to hand over to a civilian transitional.
I do apologize, seems to be having problems with the end of that report. But over in Egypt, a large crowd of people turned out for a demonstration in the capital, Cairo, to show their support for the country's army and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Al-Sisi is a former army general. He has been seen by many Egyptians as a savior who got rid of the country's Muslim Brotherhood, which was ousted last year after only 1 year in power. He won presidential elections earlier this year, angering many of the youths who participated in the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak in 2011. Those demonstrations earlier today demonstrators said that they wanted to show their support for al-Sisi and urged the government to take a firm line in dealing with militant activities in the country. And that's because the militant insurgency north in Sinai has intensified since the army overthrew President Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood about 16 months ago. That brings us to our first break on the program. When we come back, the situation in Syria as we check up on the U.S.-led coalition there. Please join us again.
If you want to know what's trending or you missed your favorite live shows, you can watch it all on our YouTube channel. Simply log on to www.youtube.com/channelsweb. Scroll down to your favorite program and click play. You can also view all uploaded videos by clicking on View All. Don't forget to subscribe and get the latest videos. If they are interesting, like them and be heard. Get connected with the channel's television YouTube page. The news at your fingertips.
Welcome back to The World Today. The International Criminal Court's chief prosecutor says that no action will be taken against Israel over the country's deadly commando raid on a Gaza-bound flotilla back in 2010. Fatou Bensouda, who's the chief prosecutor, said this was despite a reasonable basis to believe that war crimes were committed on one of the vessels of the Mavi Marara. She, however, said that the ICC had to prioritize the crimes committed on a larger scale. 9 Turkish activists were killed when the flotilla was stopped as it attempted to breach a blockade of the Palestinian territory. In total, there were 6 ships in that flotilla that were boarded in international waters about 130 kilometers from the Israeli coast on May 31st. Commandos landed on the largest ship, the Turkish-owned Mavi Marmara, by descending on ropes from helicopters. Now, overnight, the U.S.-led coalition airstrikes is set up to fight Islamic State hit al-Qaeda-linked Nusra Front in northwest Syria. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says that the airstrikes targeted an office and a vehicle used by Nusra Front in Idlib province, northwest of Syria. The observatory also reported that this is the first airstrike against Ara al-Sham, another hardline Islamic insurgents group. Rami Abdurrahman, who's head of the observatory, said it marked the second time the Nusra Front has been hit